Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You sent us a remarkable stack of sources this week, and they weren't just about financial technology. They were about the architecture of global commerce itself. Okay, so let's try and unpack this. We're diving into this surprising reality that Silicon Valley isn't just a tech hub anymore.
Not at all.
It's quietly become the invisible operating system for global finance. It's the unseen backbone deciding how credit gets extended, how you verify an identity.
And how trust is enforced globally, and it's running 204/7.
Right.
And that infrastructure point is absolutely key. So our mission today is to figure out how a region that, was once all about semiconductors and research labs became the main engine for all of this.
For cross-border payments, for
For
lending.
everything. And what's really fascinating here, the core finding in all the material, is this idea of a speed differential. Silicon Valley runs on pure digital speed.
What do you mean by digital speed?
I mean, leveraging AI, cloud computing, massive venture capital, while the traditional financial centers, New York, London, Frankfurt, they're all stuck at institutional speed.
Okay.
And that gap, that's where all the power comes from.
That's a powerful metaphor, digital versus institutional speed. It sounds less like a hostile takeover and more like they just built a faster car and drove right past everyone.
Built a whole new racetrack.
So if speed is the key, how do they even get into the race?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the origin story. I mean, we usually think of early Silicon Valley as military contracts, engineering labs, Stanford research.
Yeah, microchips.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where does money, finance fit into that picture?
Well, it fits in pretty quietly at first. The real shift happens in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was all driven by a really basic need, making online shopping actually work.
Right.
Companies realized they just couldn't use the old, slow, paper-based banking system to move money fast enough for the internet. So the breakthrough wasn't a new bank product. It was a new way to create trust.
And that, of course, has to be PayPal. That moment when a few engineers figured out you could send money with just an email address, that changed, everything.
It was completely revolutionary. It proved that financial trust could be built and maintained entirely with software.
Yeah.
You didn't need a granite bank vault or hundreds of branches.
You just needed code.
You needed encryption, automated transaction monitoring, data security. You bake identity verification right into the code itself. The software became the bank.
And the success of that created this self-perpetuating cycle. The famous PayPal Mafia is the perfect example. It shows that fintech in the Valley is driven by this structured system of capital and talent.
Exactly. When those early engineers sold the company, they didn't just retire.
No, they started the next wave. They funded and founded the platforms that define our economy now. Stripe, Tesla, LinkedIn, Palantir, Square, even YouTube. It's like an innovation machine that just keeps feeding itself.
And that machine is held up by 4 pillars that make its global dominance possible. The first one is probably the hardest for traditional finance to really get its head around. Venture capital and what we can call a tolerance for structured risk.
Okay.
Traditional banking is fundamentally designed to avoid failure at all costs. They give out capital really conservatively, using strict balance sheets.
Right.
Silicon Valley's financial culture, on the other hand, is built on structured risk. Firms like Sequoia, Y Combinator, and Andreessen Horowitz, they actively fund these wild financial experiments.
Experiments that a big bank in London or New York would never, ever touch.
Not in a million years. Too dangerous.
But hold on, if it's all based on risk and failure, doesn't that mean the consumer or maybe the early investor just ends up paying for all those failures? I mean, we've seen some huge flameouts in crypto and lending.
That is a crucial distinction. The goal isn't local stability, it's global scalability. A VC firm doesn't care if 99 ideas fail.
As long as the one that succeeds can take over the world.
Can scale to serve 5 continents in 5 years. That's the difference between funding, say, a safe regional loan book versus funding an API that could process transactions for 1 billion people.
Which is the perfect lead-in to Stripe. Stripe wasn't built to be a bank you put your money in.
No.
It was built as an API and application programming interface. For anyone who doesn't know, just think of it like a universal adapter, a digital plug that lets 2 different computer programs talk to each other securely.
Exactly. So your new website can talk to the global payment network. Stripe just provided that software plug. And it let developers build payments right into their own apps without having to worry about all the complexity.
It's invisible.
Completely invisible. And now that invisible plumbing powers e-commerce and subscriptions all across Europe, Latin America, huge parts of Africa. It's essential.
So if these firms are built on risk and they're moving at this digital speed, how are they even legally allowed to operate inside traditional financial systems that are so slow and conservative? That must be pillar two, regulation through architecture.
This is a huge strategic advantage, and it's very specific to the U.S. We have a dual banking system, federal regulation, and then 50 different state regulators.
Which sounds complicated.
It is, but it created this legal pathway for fintechs to scale like crazy. They often start by getting money transmitter licenses state by state, or, and this is the key, by partnering with small licensed regional banks.
That's the whole bank as a service model we hear about.
Precisely. You don't have to spend a decade applying for a full national banking charter. You just partner with a small bank that already has one, and the fintech just provides the modern software on top.
So you're basically renting the license.
You are. And that arrangement became this incredibly powerful export model for Silicon Valley firms to expand everywhere.
And you see the total contrast when you look globally. In China, you have Alipay and WeChat Pay, which are heavily supervised by the state.
Right.
Or India, where the UPI system was built from the ground up as a national public utility to make sure it stayed sovereign. But even with all these different national systems, SV's security frameworks and data standards still end up running underneath it all.
Which leads us straight to pillar 3, cloud computing dominance. If the software is the operating system, the cloud is the hardware. We're talking about Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure.
And you just cannot operate in modern finance without them. I mean, every digital wallet, every real-time payment app, every crypto exchange, even your own bank's mobile app.
Yeah.
It all relies on infrastructure built and managed by these few giants.
Well, the scale is the thing. A traditional bank just can't provide 247 transaction visibility or real-time fraud monitoring at a global scale. Only these massive distributed cloud platforms can handle that kind of traffic. They are the utility.
Okay, which brings us to the final pillar, artificial intelligence, the decision maker.
Yes. AI and machine learning systems have now replaced human judgment in almost every critical financial function you can think of.
How total is that shift, really? Are we talking about algorithms completely replacing people, or are they just helping them?
At scale, they're replacing them. We're talking about AI handling risk modeling, sophisticated fraud detection using behavioral analytics, biometric ID,
Algorithmic trading.
and most critically, predictive credit scoring. The old model was a human credit committee at a regional bank looking at a few data points. The new model, an algorithm makes an instant decision using thousands of data points in real time anywhere in the world.
And the global impact of that is just stunning. I mean, this transformed lending in places like Southeast Asia where traditional credit scores didn't even exist. It allowed microfinance to scale across Latin America.
It powers merchant finance in the Gulf. It's a truly global financial nervous system. And if you connect all these pillars, you see why the thesis works. Silicon Valley firms, they rarely build just one product. They build infrastructure, they do platform economics.
They build the rails that everyone else's trains run on.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's break down 3 key infrastructure companies just to show you what we mean. So take Plaid. Plaid isn't just a data connector. It's the nervous system linking your bank account to thousands of other apps.
Yeah.
Your budgeting tools, your investment platform.
It's essential. Then you have a company like Coinbase. It started as a simple place to buy crypto, but now it's an institutional gateway. It connects hedge funds and retirement providers to the entire blockchain economy. It's infrastructure for a whole new asset class.
And then there's Stripe, which we mentioned. It's not just payments anymore. It's a full financial operating system for digital businesses. It handles everything.
So the fundamental power shift here is clear. Silicon Valley now controls the rails that money travels on. And one of the key points from our sources is that in the digital world, controlling the flow, the payment rails, the data APIs, the cloud, is way more powerful than owning the vaults where the money actually sits.
And that control goes all the way down to your identity. I mean, think about it. Facial recognition to unlock your phone, behavioral biometrics, device fingerprinting, all of that was perfected not in bank security departments, but by AI researchers and cybersecurity engineers in the Valley.
You see this influence everywhere. Apple Pay, Google Pay, Square, Affirm, Plaid, Robinhood. They all use core components designed in that ecosystem. Even huge national systems like Brazil's Pix or India's UPI still rely on data routing and cloud security protocols that were heavily influenced by American tech giants.
Let's talk about that paradox we touched on earlier, failure tolerance. Traditional banks, they see failure as, a
It's
catastrophe.
the worst possible thing.
But Silicon Valley sees use failure as a training tool. We've seen dozens of crypto exchanges just vanish, lending platforms implode.
And yet, out of that constant cycle of trial, collapse, correction, and then massive scale, out of that chaos emerged the most resilient digital finance models the world has ever seen. The ability to iterate and learn from failure is why they keep dominating.
And this whole structure has huge geopolitical implications. I mean, from a global power perspective, Silicon Valley is basically America's invisible financial export engine.
Absolutely. Even when foreign governments launch their own sovereign digital currencies, most of the underlying tech, the crypto standards, the mobile chips, the data routing, is still deeply influenced by these SV firms.
The dependency is really concrete. I mean, look at Europe. Digital banks like N26 and Revolut, they completely rely on California-built cloud engines to operate.
Or Africa. Major players like Flutterwave and MTN Mobile Money use American payment security frameworks. Even Latin America's giant digital bank, Nubank, integrates risk automation built on Valley architecture.
But this concentration, as efficient as it is, must introduce some serious systemic risks. It's one thing if a single bank fails. It's another thing entirely if the global operating system crashes.
Oh, absolutely. When the vast majority of global financial infrastructure relies on just a handful of providers, you get these huge single points of failure. Think about a massive cloud outage that could halt payments across a whole continent.
Or a widespread cybersecurity breach. Or even just AI bias in lending algorithms affecting millions of people.
This dependence on foreign tech is why you see governments getting really nervous.
And that concern is leading to some very clear counter movements. You see Europe trying to invest heavily in its own sovereign cloud infrastructure to protect its data.
China has its domestic super apps, all tightly controlled. India built UPI as a public utility, specifically so a foreign corporation couldn't control its financial rails.
And in Africa, we're seeing them build out more regional payment networks to reduce the reliance on external systems. These aren't just business decisions, they are strategic moves for financial sovereignty. The world is reacting.
So what does this all mean for you? Let's just summarize the main thesis. Silicon Valley didn't really set out to replace banks. It ended up replacing how banks operate and how money flows. It re-engineered trust and credit using a scalable software, platform economics, and AI. It didn't democratize finance through charity. It did it through pure, fast digital architecture. Ultimately, Silicon Valley isn't just a place on a map anymore. It really is best understood as the financial operating system for the entire global digital economy.
So given that the majority of the world's financial technology infrastructure flows out from California, and that it all relies on just a few centralized cloud providers, what does that massive dependence really mean for the future financial sovereignty of nations and for your own ability to control your data? That's the thought we'll leave you with until the next deep dive.